I'm an acute care nurse. I work at the pulmonary unit of Wellstar Keniston. I've been a nurse 15 years. Prior to that, I was an LVN. Prior to that, I was a Navy corpsman for 8 years. I was a Navy corpsman, so I was a medic, and I did lots of different types of nursing, from emergency to labor and delivery to med-surg, acute care.
We worked together for almost a year. So last year, around this time, I started to work as a manager. And as soon as we started to work, we had a really good relationship. How I found out about the story was one of my charge nurses. She told me the story and was like, wow, I know Leanora is a very great nurse, but this story really touched me.
For this particular patient, I had the opportunity to take care of her for several days. She and I had a real connection. She's a little sassy, which I quite enjoy. When the patient was ready to be discharged, there were some barriers. Even after I explained the repercussions of going home without oxygen, because this patient really needed it, she decided she was going to go. So I then made several phone calls for hours with the oxygen company, trying to make sure that they delivered it to her house that evening to really reduce the amount of time the patient would be without oxygen. And then the next morning, mid-morning, I went over to her home to just check on her. And I'm really glad I did, because I was able to assess her home situation. She also had a feeding tube. And so when I got there, she had just begun to do her feeding and there was a problem with it. I was able to make sure she had her oxygen, make sure it was appropriate. I helped her with her peg tube, her feeding tube, cleaning it, changing the dressing. And then as we talked, we realized that there was an issue with the home health and some of the follow-up appointments with the doctors. So I sat with the patient for a while at her home, made a bunch of phone calls, and made sure that everything was in order as best as I could before I left. She was just a real jewel and special person. I was glad that I was able to make some kind of joy in her life.
She's a great nurse, and I always enjoyed working with her. She has that compassionate, and she's very good with her patients.
Nursing's not a job. Nursing is who you are. Making that connection with a patient, they put so much trust in the people who care for them that it's important that we ensure that they have a reason to trust us.